Hi, I'm Shelby Nickel. I'm a 25-year corporate veteran, and I spent most of my career inside the wealth management industry. After climbing the ladder to reach top levels at two broker-dealers, I often found myself as the only woman in the room. I felt and saw many corporate leaders and women advisors feeling left out, burned out, and ready to have more impact. If you're a woman in wealth management, this podcast is for you. In this podcast, I'll tell the stories of women who are slaying it, doing things differently, and bringing new energy to their work. This podcast is named in honor of a Muriel Siebert quote. Muriel Siebert was the first woman member of the New York Stock Exchange, and she said, "When a door is hard to open and nothing else works, sometimes you just have to rear back and kick it open." After decades of sluggish progress, it's time for us to kick the door open on women's success. Our goal with Muriel Network is to close the gaps on women in the senior leadership ranks and the gender-based wealth gap. So today's topic is one that comes up often for senior leader. It's the elusive executive presence. My guest is Jackie Knolhoff. Jackie is Executive Director of Communications at Wells Fargo and has spent 2 decades helping financial advisors build their business and navigate media opportunities to grow their businesses. Jackie is married and has 2 children who are 13 and 14. Welcome, Jackie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I'm really excited to have you today talking about this topic because you have done so much work with the media, and certainly you want to show up to media as having executive presence. It is the topic of executive presence is one that can feel really gendered as well. The things that are historically sort of executive presence are some of those male qualities. And as you sometimes hear, someone said to me recently, executive presence is primarily pale, male, and stale. Or as the Swifties might say, it's the Chads, the Brads, and the Dads. So, what do you think of, Jackie, when you think about executive presence?
When I think of executive presence, I think about how a person carries themselves and their whole package. It's from the introduction to how they sit in the meeting and interact with everyone, how that person presented themselves and how they left you feeling. It's not always what you say, but it's how you make the people feel that you're around. It is it is just it's how you carry yourself, and it's your whole package.
The whole package. I think about charisma and that influence and gravitas. I think
Mhm.
about presentations and podiums and boardrooms. And it's the
Right.
appearance pieces. I know when I'm with my girlfriends, we talk a lot about appearance.
Yeah.
What do you talk about with your girlfriends when you talk about executive presence?
I think it's knowing who you're going to be with that day. Like, we've worked together and we are used to those high profile presentations, large auditoriums. It's your chance to deliver your message, to sell your idea. But it's also the times when you're in the hallway and you're in between meetings and people think they have that 1 minute with you to pitch their idea or to have that. And it's that short engagement. So I think when I'm talking to people, it's people recall the little moments that they have in addition to, did you see her nail that presentation? So it's how you carry yourself at all times, and there's no off time. So your executive presence, you're on all the time now because everyone remembers every little interaction. And with flexible work schedules, people have less time for that face to face. So it means more, to always have your guard on and think about how you're presenting yourself.
So it's a great point, and it reminds me of an article that we're going to discuss today. So we found this article from Forbes, and we're going to link it in the show notes. There are a million lists and frameworks and tips out there for how to build executive presence, but this article has a really interesting take. It's called Executive Presence: 8 Warning Signs You Don't Have It. And as you talk about the little moments, Jackie, it really talks about some of those little moments. The author
Mhm.
of the article is Tarina Allen. It's from 2019, so it is pre-COVID, it's pre-pandemic, pre-Zoom, but I thought it would be fun for us to go through these
Yeah.
warning signs and discuss. All right, so the first warning sign is that you rarely speak up or you tend to shy away from asking questions.
Sure. That
Yeah.
often carries over when people are in new roles, and I was guilty of this. I had taken a break from media relations and I went to market research, and I felt I was learning and I wasn't thinking out loud and carrying myself at the level that I was at with all my past history. And so I think speaking up, even if you're talking and you're referencing your past experiences, even though you're in a new space, I think we can all do more of that.
I see this also with introverts. They're sometimes viewed as not having a lot of executive presence, and they really have to kind of force themselves
Yeah.
to speak up in that room.
Right, right. You can have great ideas, and there is no bad idea. It just adds to the conversation, and your comment might spark an idea in someone else.
That's right. We all have a unique viewpoint. Okay, warning sign number two was you speak up too much and end up dominating the conversation. Okay, this was me. I am an external processor. I also learned early on that sometimes I had a unique viewpoint just being where I was from or whatnot. I came up in marketing and customer insights and then led a product area. So I was not a traditional person in the roles that I had, especially in the later part of my career. And
But
so,
you were
depending,
selected because you did have experiences, so you were valuable.
yes, yes. But sometimes, depending on the leader, they may not like all that external processing. That I might have had a voice that they didn't want to hear.
Yeah, yeah. I think that so maybe not in your case, but in other people's case where they don't have the experiences that maybe I'm attracted to, I stop listening. I would think that won't work, and that's shame on me. You know, to keep the conversation going. Even if it's not a good idea for me, it might be a good idea for someone else at the table and we're having this discussion. But as far as like executive presence, you have to stay engaged. So maybe it doesn't work for you right then and there, but don't shut that person off. Keep listening because it might spark further discussion down the road. And
Yeah, that's a great point. Talk to me also about being concise because this is speaking up too much, dominating the conversation. I know there's some data that says that for men, the more you talk, the more credible you are. But for women, the opposite can be true. What have you seen? Because you've been training people to do media, I would think
yeah, it's easier
conciseness.
said than done. And I myself am often guilty of it. So when working with the media, we often prepare our talking points, write them out. We know what we want to say. We might have a little cheat sheet in front of us before we do a media interview of what our key messages are. When you're talking with media, they pause so that you do just continue to spew out information. That's not necessarily your core um, points that you want to make. So to be succinct, have your tips written out in front of you. Think about many ways to say the same thing. And then, ask the group if they're following.
That's great. Do you in media still use tools like message maps?
Of course, it depends, especially as the industry changes, rules and regs change. You want to make sure that you're accurate and you're right, but you always come back to your home base. What is it that that your business, that you as an individual, that your brand wants to do? So you answer those questions that are new or trending, and then you bring it back to who you and your brand really is, and message maps help you stay on point.
Sign that you might not have executive presence number three is you struggle to moderate your emotions or struggle to adjust to others' emotions. This one, this one kind of got my goat as I read it.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
Well, it's one thing to have emotion, but I think some people are so passionate about what they do, and how can that, you leading with passion, you're leading your team to accomplish your goals, whatever it is you're setting out to do. I think some people may confuse that passion with emotion, and that's maybe not fair.
Yeah, maybe we should take this as you struggle to moderate like the negative emotions, maybe,
Yeah.
prone to outbursts or something like that. I think that's obviously not a great executive behavior. It's just not
Right,
good
right, right.
behavior.
That's a problem.
Right. That's a
To
problem.
demotivate your team. So emotions as the gauge on how you interact with others, that's a whole nother topic. But I think emotion and passion is good as long as it's cheering the team and moving it forward.
I think you have to also show some emotion or at least some passion in order to be an inspirational leader.
Yes. Yeah. Passion, inspiration. Yeah, it motivates. Without that, you're just clocking in and doing your job. It's not who you are or what you're aspiring to be.
Yeah. One thing I also thought of was that it feels as if men can go a lot further on the emotion scale than women can. I know of male executives who will, throw things down in a meeting and storm out. Those kinds of stories. And that doesn't
Grand
seem to
gestures, the big gestures.
the big
But if women
gestures.
do it, they're being catty or they're having a hissy fit.
Yes, I
Right.
can't even imagine. We would be viewed as so unprofessional if we did that, but it's tolerated
Yeah, I
for.
think outbursts is one of our next topics of leaders, but I have a story for that one when we get to that one.
Okay, well, let's go to that one. So, yes, you're right. Number four is you're prone to outbursts or tolerate workplace bullying.
Yes, I think people that can't regulate their emotions, can't bring reel it to be appropriate, I think they ruin their own career. I think they pull themselves on whatever track that they're hoping to be on. They just flat out don't work well with others. And I have an example of this back in the day when newspapers were still circulated and everybody got one on their desk. I would read the news online before I came in, but other people on my team viewed that you had to read that physical newspaper that was waiting for you on your chair. And one day someone said, "Did you see the headline?" And I didn't know what the headline on the print edition was. And he threw the paper at me. And I just thought, I've lost all respect for you. Like, this is not how you treat men, women, children, animals, and I just lost confidence in my leader. And,
Absolutely.
that's
It's hard to come back from that.
right. And that's, referring back to our last topic of emotions. Um, that's when your emotions bubble up and that's an outburst. And you don't want those. And women can't have those because then we're, bullying in the workplace and not being a good leader. That's the double standard.
Absolutely. Yeah. Then we're hysterical
Yeah.
and who knows when we might pop off again. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
And that's what people will remember, not the good idea, not the latest campaign you did a slam dunk on. They'll remember how you acted.
Yeah. The outburst. The second part of this one really attracted me too, the tolerate workplace bullying, because I think about how as women we are often trained, especially my generation, right? I'm like in my mid 40s. And as we were
Yeah.
coming up, there were certain behaviors that happened and you just had to sort of just look away in some ways. And there was a certain amount of things that you had to kind of put up with, unfortunately. That world has shifted. And now that would be complicit in bad behavior. And
Right. Not
tolerate
tolerated.
yeah, we cannot tolerate workplace bullying. And you would be viewed as weak if you don't speak up when something happens.
Right.
Um,
And we can really thank our children and the school systems for teaching us to stand up for ourselves and to recognize when someone does have bad behavior. And it is now okay to acknowledge that and discuss with others how that is not how we're going to do this going forward.
yeah, I've been afraid at times of discussing it. And I've certainly have seen poor leadership. And as I get further into my career, I think, gosh, if I don't speak up, I am complicit. I
Right.
am
I'm
just the
supporting it.
same.
Yes.
I'm just supporting it. Yeah.
And it's also disappointing when you have senior leaders, above you that see it and take no action. I've had that in my career to where it was easier just to look away, whether the person is being a bully or being grumpy in a meeting when someone has great ideas. Um, you can't look away. You got to face it and take care of it, or it's a distraction to the rest of your team.
It is. And it's hard because you do feel like you're potentially on the line for the next promotion, et cetera, and you don't
Right.
want to make waves. It's a very difficult line for so many of us.
Right. Right.
One story I have too on tolerating workplace bullying and an example of great executive presence was at Edward Jones. And I was presenting to the executive committee, and the chief legal officer had some data that had contradicted our proprietary study on a certain
Mm,
topic. And he really it was several legal officers ago, actually. It was
yeah.
quite a long time ago. Um, but the executive really kind of came after me in this meeting, and I was, pretty new to the firm. I'd been there a couple of years, maybe.
You were sitting around the table with many people. It wasn't a whole
Many people, there's 20-ish people in the room.
gosh, yeah.
I'm at one end of the table, he's in the middle, etc. I stood my ground with that leader, and I was really anchored by the accuracy of what we had done. And I had prepared because I had seen the research
Yeah.
that he was bringing up. I had prepared for that comment and question. But afterwards, my division leader, who's now running the firm, it was Penny
Mhm.
Pennington, she went to him afterwards and said, "Don't come after my team like that again."
Yeah.
And
Good
that
for her.
came back to me. And that was such an amazing example of not tolerating that kind of bullying in that kind of a
Yeah.
meeting.
Right. And she had your back. So you're more confident now to present that same data, or as the story evolves, continue it. And that's
Yeah.
like having passion, like we were talking earlier. She wasn't emotional. She had support and passion for her team. And it all kind of builds and evolves. And, if that would have been allowed, it would not have, encouraged the progress for the team.
Well, and can you imagine how I certainly would have felt, right? If that was allowed and then I was stifled from there, then,
Right.
anytime I was presenting research and somebody had a different point of view
Right.
from
You can't
some
back down.
random thing they read, that would undo all of the
Yeah.
good work that we'd
Pretty
done.
confident though when you present. So I'm pretty sure you held your ground.
It was a good meeting, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So
Funny thinking about executive presence, it's the awkward moments that you grow the most. It's the, ooh, I kind of got a little hot and sweaty in there, that it caught me off guard, but I did this. And then you think about when you look back and reflect, that helps you build your executive presence for the next big meeting, for the next big presentation.
that's an excellent point. That was such a growth opportunity for me, but I was very strong in what the data said, and I
Right.
believed in the validity of the data and the research that the team had done. But it definitely makes you think about that, right? Like, what are you anchored in? If you're presenting a certain
Right.
opinion, what is it anchored in? And is it in fact or not? Do you know those facts cold? And do you also have the heart belief at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, barrier number 5, or sign that you don't have executive presence number 5, is you show up late or you don't take time to interact with or engage with your audience.
Yeah. I was thinking about this one. So think about, being an executive or being a financial advisor, and you are going to see a client on site. And maybe your client owns a business and it's a factory. Factories run on time, like clockwork. You probably don't need to wear a suit to the factory. If you know what their business is, just knowing your client and meeting them where they're at, be on time, look like them, and know them, so that when you arrive, they see that you do know who they really are.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think about, I've been reading this book, Influence is Your Superpower by Zoe Chance.
Okay.
And it's similar to the Kahneman book around slow and fast thinking. And she talks about the gator brain and the judge brain and how we make so many decisions in this like split second, very quickly gator brain. And so I think executive presence and how you sort of show up and being on time and being able
Right.
to glad hand a little bit if
It's
it's a
kind of
big
having the full
presentation.
package and knowing where you need to be and when.
Yes, yes. But I will
And
say I was
that doesn't happen overnight. That happens from all these, topics we've been discussing of fails. You won't do that again. You remember what you do poorly.
right.
Fortunately, we as moms and women and, caregivers, you learn from your mistakes, and that's true in how you carry yourself too.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I was always late to meetings. I am a chronically
Well,
late.
they run over when you're back to back to back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you hate to do a hard stop when I always say the best part of the meeting is the last 2 minutes. It's like from 9:58 to 10 a.m. Those last 2 minutes are when you're finally going to get everybody on the same page, and then you got to go.
Yes. Yeah. It's a great point. All right. Number 6, fidget, ramble, or display a disconnect between your verbal and nonverbal messages.
Yeah, this is something working with financial advisors or executives when it's hard when you're on the phone. And like during COVID, we did everything via Zoom. So it's not just you, it's your background, it's being honest, we're on a podcast. I just put the dogs outside because it was distracting me and I didn't know what the listeners could hear. So I wanted to take that away. That distracted my mind. It all rolls into your final presentation and how you're presenting yourself. So if you can think ahead of time before that interview, before that presentation, before that Zoom interview, clear all that out so you can just focus on your key messages.
Yeah, I thought this one too with the fidget, I thought could also be taking lots of notes. So if you're looking too much at your notes, you might look like you don't know your material. Or if you're in a
Oh,
meeting and you're frantically scribbling notes, that
right.
cannot that can look like you're not very engaged in the conversation, or it can look like you're the admin at the
Right.
table.
That's a good call out. And I'm guilty in my career. I've often wanted to be the scribe so that I knew I would have good notes afterwards. But then I wasn't looked upon as the thought leader in the room or one of the thought leaders or the leader of the discussion because I was just kind of capturing everything. I knew I needed that for later for my purposes to create the strategy and the story that we wanted to tell. But yeah, that is a good call out.
Yeah, I had a leader really early in my career, and she was just always a little kind of too perfect, a little too robotish, and she took tons of notes and just never quite made it in that executive ranks because she just wasn't viewed as an executive given those
Right.
things.
When you are building your acumen and you are building your experience and the stories you can share, if I could look back at my younger self, I would say, before I worked at Edward Jones, I was in college and I worked at a hospital and I worked in medical records. Well, I had stories and experiences from there, but I didn't draw the parallel to the skills that were presented in my current role. People have something to say. We just need the confidence to say it sooner.
That's interesting. I love that. I think also what you're getting at is just bringing your whole set of experiences to bear and making those connections across
Yes.
the lifetime. Okay.
Yes, it makes you more approachable and it's not, we were talking earlier about emotion. People will see that you have skill sets other than just on what we're talking about. And that helps you bring your whole self to whatever opportunity you're working.
Okay, number 7 is you behave unprofessionally, look unkempt, or smell bad.
Okay, well, ladies, let's shower and remember our deodorant. But so I do have a funny story on this topic. I was at lunch one time. It was a work day. It was a not a working lunch, but it was a work day, and I was meeting a friend for lunch. I think it was a Friday. A nice restaurant in West St. Louis, and a gentleman walked by, and he had on black trousers, like a khaki pant, black tennis shoes, and he was carrying a backpack. And my friend goes, "Oh my gosh, that guy's applying for a chief technology role at XYZ company." And I was like, "Oh, he is." She's like, "Yeah, I don't think he's going to get it because that's how he looks." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And he did get the role, but he wasn't a good fit for the role. And I think he lasted like 6 months at said company. And it was just so funny how when I saw him, I was like, "Oh, okay, she knows that person." But then I found out he was going for a C-suite spot. And I was like, "No." And I just could tell he didn't carry himself, wasn't confident, but on some dress shoes. I know briefcases are out of style, but I think maybe his son had carried his backpack. So, it's just like, it's not about cleanliness, people. It's about always, being put together. And that sounds, it's harder for women. I mean, this is a gentleman that I'm referencing.
Yeah, I have one girlfriend that she talks a lot about shoulders back, heels on,
Oh,
right? So it's all about
don't
that
slouch.
posture. Yeah, you don't
Yes.
slouch, and the heels give you a different way that you are walking that has a little bit
Yeah.
more authority, even more so than like a wedge would,
Yes.
which is
Yeah.
interesting. I was surprised that it wasn't until number 7 that we get to appearance in this list. That
Right.
because I think most of us land here a lot. We think a lot about our clothes and our hair and our makeup and our
Right.
nails.
Right. I have to say that during COVID, post COVID, and return to office. So I'm currently sitting in an office in downtown St. Louis, and no one in my office building is on my direct team. So I often wear uh, from Athleta, some very nice leisure wear, black pants, and I will wear a loafer. No one sees me below my waist. So I'm on camera all the time. So I've made more investments in blazers and nice sweaters. And you have to have eye makeup on, ladies. You must wear eye makeup if you're going to have a camera on you. So I and when I knew you at Edward Jones, I wore the nicest suits I could afford. I wore the 3-inch heels. I did it all. And now I just do what people see.
I'm really glad you said eye makeup because also in another book I was reading in preparation for this is Sylvia Ann Hewlett's Executive Presence 2.0. And she's like the grand mother of, I don't know what to call it, the queen mother of
Grand
all
Dame.
the grand dame of executive presence books. She wrote the first one like 10 years ago. She's like
Okay.
probably why we all talk about it. So she has a new book out, but one of the things that it really showed in there was more makeup, not less. To your point, we need that eye makeup, not too glitzy. Like you want to hit
Right.
the note between like natural makeup and total drama. There's a
Right.
certain spot in between where you are really viewed as having executive presence and not being slouchy. So
Yeah.
I thought your comment there was important.
Right.
Um,
And I'd also say that women and their jewelry, I think, statement necklaces are great, but don't wear turtlenecks in July. When we're thinking about you have to be timely, you have to show you're aware. So less is more, but seasonally being correct is also a win.
It's a great point. I've always wondered and wished. I've always wished I had like a uniform sort of signature style. My girlfriends might say, well, I wear a blazer a lot. That's probably the closest that I get to a signature style, but it seems like that would be easier.
Yeah, I do. I am guilty. I think I have 15 black Gap shirts in my closet for layering. And so I always know for my staple, if I'm in a rush, I can grab a black top, a black jean or slacks or whatever you want to call them today, and then just a random blazer. And I will be comfortable and confident with that. I know I've got requirements on and I know they look good and they fit. My daughter's a dancer and costumes they help explain who you are. It's not Halloween. It helps tell the story. And so I've learned a lot from her and her friends.
Number eight, signal that you do not have executive presence is that you fail to set standards for integrity, ethics, and boundaries. We all have to set our standard for integrity, ethics, and boundaries. We need to figure out where our lines are and stick to them. And this is hard, especially when you are in the midst of promotion time and you might be up for the
Right.
next promotion.
Right. It's tricky. I mean, I think all the topics that we've covered today, they all kind of build and as we all seek growth and advancement in our career, they all build on each other. When I was reviewing this story, when you shared it with me, I was thinking of the Real Housewives of New York. There's one of the characters on there sings a song. She does cabaret, and it's not great, but it's good. But it's funny because she sings a song, Money Can't Buy You Class. And as you grow in your career and you do start to make more money, and maybe you have, different incentives with your company, if you are not kind to work with, if you don't make ethical decisions and influence those on your team, to do the same, and you're just not a classy stand-up person, you're not gonna have the buy-in from your team.
Yeah, absolutely. As I thought about this one too, I really came back to this idea that we can't be complicit with bad behavior. And we certainly have talked about that one. It can be really tricky for us to know when we want to speak up. And I think also women are held to sort of this double bind as well.
Mhm.
One of the things that I've been reading a lot about is how to get past that double bind. And one of the tool sets is a framing statement where instead of just calling out a bad behavior, you might or a different idea even, you frame it about why you feel so strongly that you need to speak up. I feel it's a matter of values, or I feel it's a matter of integrity for our firm that
So you
blah,
weave
blah,
that
blah.
language in. That's what you're
And so
suggesting, your guardrails?
you weave that language in because it removes some of the sort of negative emotion of women's having strong opinions
Okay.
by
I like that.
framing it with a bigger purpose that's above
Right.
you. Hmm.
Yeah. No, that's good.
This was a fairly old article. Anything in the Zoom world that we should add or take away here? I think Zoom is really important personally. Like you need a decent background. Yours has some greenery today. You have a
Yeah.
mantle behind you. Tell us, what do
Right,
you tell
right.
people for media interviews with Zoom?
Right. So, in the industry, in the financial services industry, you cannot, if you are regulated, you cannot use a fake background. And I don't know if all people know that are independent and think they can just have the beach behind them. Of course, you want it to be appropriate for your audience and who you're speaking with, but it needs to be authentic. And a lot of people are doing colored wallpaper. That might be what you have, or if you did your own chalk drawing, it's beautiful. But I have a lot of colleagues and peers that have florals. It's real and it's not distracting. It's just it looks like a natural setting.
Yeah, I like that too. It's anything that you would say from a personal object standpoint that an advisor should have or should not have in their background.
I wouldn't do a window. You can see in mine today, if you can see that, Shelby, there's a little reflection. The sun moves during the day, cars come, create a glow. You just no windows because you can't control it. And some people do Zoom interviews in their closet, and that's fine. My husband works in the basement because he can close a door, and I'm in an open space, but I like to be on the main floor. So be comfortable wherever you sit, but set it up as your office. Respect it, have others respect it, and it's your presentation of yourself.
That's right. I remember at one firm we had a person in finance and he had these bookshelves behind him and the bookshelves looked great, but they were always kind of messy.
Oh
And
yeah,
it seemed as if every time we would get on the phone with even some of the executive team, like somebody would make a comment about the books, like, hey,
yes,
man, aren't you going to clean up the books? Or they look just the same as they did the last time we were on this call, or, something to that effect. So I'd say, too, if you have stuff behind you, if you've got objects there, like put a little
distraction, and
design.
your audience is not going to hear your message.
Yeah,
So,
when the shelves are
that's
messy, it's sending a signal.
right. I'd clear the shelves and just put some simple art, some little structures of different shapes or pictures that, aren't present day. Don't make them timely to where they look old. Have it be like your favorite childhood photo or something that tells a story in itself, but not something that people are going to try to figure out while you're speaking.
Yeah, good point. Great point. Any other last thoughts?
I just, when I think of executive presence, I think of, you know, you want to make yourself proud. You want to be proud of not just the show you're putting on, the interview you're giving, the presentation you're presenting, but every day it's a building towards who you are, where you want to go, what you want your career to do. And we get tired. We wear a lot of hats, but put on that eyeliner, feel confident, stand your ground. And I think women are doing amazing things right now.
Fantastic. Yeah, as my friend Jennifer Bowman would say, heels on, shoulders back. To your point, have the eyeliner, all those things, but then stand your ground, know your message, be passionate about it, be an inspirational leader. It's great.
Right. Right. And
Love
be
it.
there for one another. Well, thank
Oh,
you
even
so much for
best.
this. I love this discussion.
This
Good
was
luck
a
to
lot of
all the
fun.
listeners.
Thanks, Jackie. Appreciate you being here. Have a great day.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Hey, friends, if you like this podcast, we have 3 quick things you can do to support us. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this podcast with your contacts and go over to Muriel Network, Muriel network.com and sign up for our free newsletter. Thanks. You might be wondering what Muriel Network is all about. Muriel Network is a modern digital community for women who work in wealth management, including those who are at the home offices and the broker dealers, the asset management firms, and those who are advisors and wealth planners working directly with clients. With 75% men at the top and over 75% men in the advisor and planner community, we women often find ourselves overspoken, underestimated, and very burned out. Muriel Network is a refuge, a safe space where we can unite, support one another, inspire each other to take the big leaps, and learn how to really break through. Learn more at Muriel Network, MURIEL network.com. If you and I both go, it will be incredible. See you there.